Tokenization has been one of the leading topics around crypto for roughly the last, I want to say 7 months, right? Since the beginning of the year, but let's just be real. Tokenization has been heating up in terms of the discussions and the narrative since going all the way back to about roughly 2023, right? The end of 2022, we kept hearing from BlackRock about how bullish tokenization is. Nobody really wanted to listen. Then into 2024, we started to see tokenization really heat up. And today, well, tokenization is now over $25.43 billion. We see this entire market continuing to push forward, up 7.41% in the last 30 days. And it doesn't seem to be slowing down at all. Now, when we think about this, obviously we have the networks to kind of go off of. And we can see all of the networks down here, right? Now, I will say some of these networks have started to really kind of rise in the last 30 days. I mean, Aptos is up 53.76% in terms of tokenized RWAs on chain, and they did steal the number 3 spot, which is technically the number 2 spot because ZK Sync Era is a layer 2, not a layer 1. And then, of course, Solana is also up 14.5% at about $517 million, outpacing Stellar. Because Stellar was holding the number 3 spot for quite some time, technically the number 2, but it got pushed out of that spot by Solana and even Aptos. And this is showing us that we're starting to see more and more increased tokenization adoption happening. Now, if we actually look at the networks themselves, we look at XRP. XRP is sitting at about roughly number 12. Now, I was watching this and it seems as though, I don't know if RWA.xyz is glitching a bit, but some of the tokenized values were starting to kind of drop. For example, they stopped tracking the $13 million AAELF, which is the Aberdeen Liquidity Fund Lux Euro Fund. That got put down to 0 from 13 million. I don't know why. I feel like a lot of the API stuff is incorrect on RWA.xyz. It's very hard to actually track this accurately, but I'm still watching for more and more tokenized initiatives to go live on the XRP Ledger because we already know that there is going to be a lot more tokenization initiatives going live this year around the XRPL. But so far, I do think that this is sitting at about roughly 160 million. It's hard to say for certain. I know that it was at 160 million the last time that I looked at it, but right now it's at about 120 million, up about 9.19% in the last 30 days. Nothing too crazy, but we already know that there's a lot more things going on around the XRPL. For an example, the most recent announcement was on July 4th, which was in one of LATAM's largest tokenization efforts to date. Mercado Bitcoin is bringing over $200 million in RWAs on chain to the XRP Ledger, including fixed income and equity income instruments. The assets will connect to a network trusted by more than 70 central banks and financial institutions, which is probably the most bullish part about this, right? It's not so much about the amount because, I mean, obviously $200 million is great because we're at about 120 million. If you're going off of what the figure was before this glitch happened, because I don't know what happened here. We don't have, anything to kind of go off of. But if we're just going off of even both of those numbers, this is more money that's on the XRP Ledger currently. So that's a huge amount to bring onto the XRPL. And Mercado Bitcoin has been absolutely killing the game. We've actually been talking about them with Stellar, because if you actually don't know, I believe it was Stellar, or no, it was XDC. XDC was the one that had most of the Mercado Bitcoin initiative. So they have 28 RWA or 26 RWAs for Mercado Bitcoin. We can actually see all of them. It's all around private credit. So Mercado Bitcoin, I mean, they've been a big player here. They have about $214 million on chain currently, and now they want to release another 200 million in RWAs onto the XRPL, which is incredible to see. We also know that there's a few additional RWA initiatives that have yet to actually hit the XRPL that were announced this year. So we have to wait patiently. By the end of this year, I think that these numbers that we see on the RWA.xyz website, I think that we're going to see these numbers change in a huge way. But outside of that, also, we've been hearing from very prominent names that tokenization is about to wake up in a huge way. In fact, a 4,000x way. That's right. That's not me selling you guys on anything. We heard this from a prominent asset management company. A 4,000x gain. But first, let's start off with Vlad Tenev from Robinhood. Tokenization is the biggest innovation to come to capital markets in the past decade. That's how Robinhood CEO Vlad Tenev describes tokenization. He points to something powerful. The future won't be either crypto or traditional. It will be both, working in tandem to redefine markets. And this got posted by Ondo. Obviously, Ondo has a partnership with Ripple as well to bring OUSG onto the XRPL. You can actually see that real quick. Ondo number 3, $30.1 million. Actually up 200% in the last 30 days as well. And we can actually see OUSG right here. Outside of that, let's actually tap into this video. Listen close.
I mean, you mentioned, launching this in the U.S. as well. Is there a specific, regulatory change that you need in order to get this done?
Well, for tokenization in the U.S., we do believe that the SEC has the authority to make it happen without legislation, which is interesting. And you probably saw last week, Chairman Atkins of the SEC gave an interview about tokenization. He called it a great innovation. And we agree with that. We think tokenization is perhaps the biggest innovation to come into capital markets in the past decade. So I think the U.S. shouldn't be far behind. I think the opportunity is too large to ignore, not just for retail, but also institutional. And I think they're keen. They're having tokenization roundtables at the SEC, which we've been a part of. So
how quickly can we expect
hard to predict.
Yeah.
I think the challenge with the U.S. is we already have something that works. We have the traditional financial system. It's maybe not 24/7, which tokenization would allow, but it's 24/5. There's a lot of stakeholders that we have to make sure feel good about the change. I mean, we haven't even fully moved off of mainframe in the U.S. So I think it could take time, but I'd like to see the door opening for tokenization rather quickly. And I actually think our event should help accelerate that. Now that you see real products that are useful to customers with this fundamental technology, I think there's going to be more and more pressure for, industry partners around the world to adopt the technology.
Now, on top of this, right, we already heard from Robinhood multiple times this year that stocks are going to be tokenized. This is probably one of the largest retail-based stock trading and stock investment applications out there, and platforms as well. Robinhood has become a very prominent name. Obviously, it has left a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths after GameStop and AMC and all that. But, again, the fact that we're hearing about this from prominent names like Robinhood just goes to show you how quick things are changing. Now, he also did talk about how, he's urging the market to really kind of start opening up to tokenization. He was also one of the CEOs urging the SEC to get behind tokenization in a big way back in roughly the beginning of this year. Now, we already know that the SEC is starting to, really kind of switch on, which, we'll talk about that here in a second. But we've also been hearing from names like Larry Fink talking about the tokenization of bonds and stocks and how it's next. It will democratize more finance. Trillions are coming. Check this out.
But crypto is going to play a big role. Digitization of currency, digitization of everything we're doing. I'm a big believer, and this is one thing that will change Bloomberg even. I believe we're going to be in the cutting edge of tokenizing bonds and stocks. Coming. And we have the technology now. The fact that we are now moving forward in tokenization, every bond and stock, is crazy. Yeah. We should be moving towards that frontier. Obviously, there's winners and losers and all that, but we need to be prepared for the tokenization. And it would democratize more finance if we tokenized bonds and stocks. But crypto is going to play.
And again, Larry Fink has been very bullish on tokenization. He even released a full annual letter back in March of this year talking about how tokenization is the next big step, how it's going to open up the markets in a huge way, how decentralized finance is an extraordinary innovation. It makes markets faster, cheaper, and more transparent, yet the same innovation could undermine America's economic advantages if investors begin seeing Bitcoin as a safer bet than the dollar. So, he's just talking a little bit more about, how we still need to focus on the US dollar. and how this could be a problem for the US dollar, which enter in stablecoins. All of a sudden, stablecoins become the fix to that problem, and we no longer have to talk about the economic advantage being undermined because of this. But overall, it was a huge +1 from BlackRock and Larry Fink. And when we think about that, Bitwise did recently just say on July 10th, if Larry Fink is right, the tokenization market could grow 4,000x, not 4x, not 40x, not even 400x. We are talking about a 4,000x push here. There aren't many markets that can say that. And listen, this is not a ridiculous number. You got to think about it like this, okay? The full tokenized value on chain currently is we'll just say $25.5 billion, okay? If we're looking at this, a 4,000x would be $102 trillion. Guess what? A 4,000x is actually not that crazy to think about when we have players like the DTCC moving in on tokenization. The DTCC settles $3+ quadrillion per year in securities transactions. $102 trillion is not a crazy number to think about when you have players like that moving in on tokenization. Now, we also have over here from Bitwise. At Bitwise, we often talk about a aha moment in crypto. Here's a big one. When you realize just how many things in life, money, property records, contracts, retail inventories, tax filings, supply chain, securities exist as an entry on a database. If it's on a database, it's a potential application for crypto. Here we have the SEC chair, Paul Atkins, saying that tokenization is an innovation. My whole goal is to make things transparent. Again, this is where we go back to January, where Vlad Tenev from Robinhood and even Larry Fink from BlackRock were urging the SEC to get behind tokenization. Now they are behind tokenization in a big way. Check it out.
Tokenization is an innovation, and we at the SEC should be focused on how do we advance innovation in the marketplace. And so I would argue here over the last several years, the SEC has been standing athwart efforts to innovate in the marketplace because things have been unclear. The rules have not been clear. We've had regulation through enforcement. That day is over. We are now, my whole goal is to make things transparent, from the regulatory aspect and give people a firm foundation upon which to innovate and to come out with new products and so that they know what they're doing.
I think there are two things to think about, Andrew, and that's tokenization of U.S. stocks, which is one thing which could drive a lot of cost savings for all parties.
I'm not against tokenization. I'm saying
settlement
if you wanted
to reduce.
I'm talking about if you wanted to
tokenizing
SpaceX, which is a private company.
And then there's also an access to private credit, I think you were mentioning, which is a complete individual investor access to private credit, which is also another sort of tricky area in that this is also, as you mentioned, it's not as much liquidity. Valuations are very difficult, particularly, I would imagine, for an individual investor. I mean, there are a lot of things here that are new frontiers for investors. Where do you stand on that?
Well, two questions. So as far as tokenization, other innovations in the marketplace to make trading and holding securities easier and with quick settlement, my predecessor pushed for what we call T+1, meaning settlement and clearance the day after the trade, the trading day. And so tokenization and other aspects of doing that tokenization in the marketplace is yet the next step to have much more efficiency in the marketplace and certainty of having a trade settle.
And guess what they're talking about? Tokenization of securities, the DTCC, like I said, 3+ quadrillion. And then we think about, the discussion here, a 4,000x to 102 trillion. It's not that crazy of a number. And by the way, the XRP has been purpose built for this. It's been purpose built around DeFi and tokenization. this market around tokenization is just getting started. We are seeing drops of water compared to where we're headed. And now is the best time to lock in and really focus on this and focus on the prominent networks and the most successful networks behind this that are going to see a large amount of money pouring into them. So with that being said, I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. If you guys definitely leave a like, subscribe, notifications on because more free content. You guys are more than welcome to follow me on Twitter and join the free Discord in the description below. And with that being said, guys, it's been Nick. Thanks for watching. Peace out.